that he would often notice things, like the clouds moving too fast, which he deemed was a sign that something bad was going to happen. He had a compulsion for washing his hands, sometimes using an entire bottle of soap in one washing. Most would describe his childhood years as coming from a broken home. John attended 7 different schools within 9 years, but each school was in a middle-class neighborhood and had as many black students as white, and John grew up having several friends that were black. He moved a lot between Lexington and Columbia, South Carolina, and went to school in Lexington for 4th, 8th, and 9th grades, and in Columbia for 5th grade at Rosewood Elementary School. During his 5th grade year, John was described as shy and never really part of the crowd. Several former classmates stated that though he was introverted, he certainly never made racist comments or treated his black classmates differently. There were no signs of the dark young man he would eventually grow into. Despite the many moves and appearances of a broken family, John's grandfather was a well-known local attorney, and the family was respected. When John was a teen, his parents struggled financially, and in 2009 his mother was evicted from her home, and it was during these years that he was primarily raised by his stepmother. He had an older half-sister and a younger half-sister, although it's unclear how close John was with his siblings growing up. His dad restored old historic homes, but his business fell deeply into debt, and he went under, closing within a few years. In the 9th grade, John was attending the White Knoll High School, but he was struggling greatly and, as a result, was required to repeat the 9th grade. When he was 13, and in 8th grade, John started smoking marijuana. At age 14 and in 9th grade, he started smoking cigarettes and drinking. By 17, he was smoking a pack per day, and had been caught spending his money for pot as early as middle school years. After taking 9th grade for the second time, John decided to drop out for good in 2010, though he ended up earning a GED online. He was rarely employed, and couldn't seem to hold a job, making his employment history very limited. Once he dropped out of school, John was experimenting with drugs and alcohol pretty heavily, and as such, had a few run-ins with the police. Around this time, John began reading white supremacist websites, and only months before the shooting, he started bragging to others that he was going to start a race war. Despite his growing dark thoughts, John's interests seemed much like other teenage boys. He liked skateboarding and playing video games, and even wrestled for a time. For about 2 months, in 2014 and 2015, John worked at Clark's Termite and Pest Control. Coworkers noticed that John would sometimes be caught staring into space, and when coworkers ate lunch together as a group, John would go sit alone, and his boss recalled that he often had trouble keeping John on task, and frequently had to call John back to the present. One coworker asked John what he did for fun once, and John responded that he didn't do anything except go home and stare at the wall.
All I've ever had was just doing landscaping, like lawn maintenance, I guess. That's pretty much what it was.
Okay. And
About 4 months before the shooting, John posted a picture of himself on Craigslist, seeking a companion to take a historical tour of Charleston with him. The ad indicated that John would not go with certain people, and went on to list those people as being Jewish, gay, and black, although he used much more offensive language. A retired psychologist saw the ad and reached out to John. The psychologist did so, believing he might assist in expanding John's view of the world and other people. He even offered to pay John to view certain TED Talks on these subjects. John simply continued using hate speech, and declined any offers from the former psychologist. While John had few, or no real friendships, he apparently connected with a few younger individuals using the library computer. John went to the library to use the free computers and ended up making a Facebook account. After setting up the account, he friended about 88 people, many of whom were black kids he previously went to school with. During his later interrogation with police, John stated he requested 88 friends because the letter H was the 8th letter of the alphabet, and HH meant Heil Hitler. Therefore, 88 was the number of friends he would have. Whether he sent friend requests to black people because he eventually planned to target them is unknown. Why he chose those 88 people specifically is unknown. In the weeks before the shooting, John reconnected with a boy he knew from middle school that we will call Ken throughout this case. John was staying at Ken's house many nights before the shooting, and the young men hung out quite a bit. Even with this friendship, John was reserved and distant. He seemed to enjoy the other boys' company, but oftentimes, when he was at Ken's, John would become so overwhelmed that he would nearly have a panic attack and would have to go out to his car and blast classical music as loud as the speakers would go. John alleged that this calmed his nerves. Ken was never really certain what would set John off like this. On March 2, 2015, the police were called to the Columbiana Center Mall because John was there, walking about and asking bizarre questions to shoppers, and acting out in an odd manner. When police arrived, John was found to be in possession of Suboxone, and he was very high on the same drug. He was charged with drug possession and banned from the mall. Suboxone is typically prescribed to treat opiate addiction, though many abuse it as a recreational drug that is known for its euphoric effect. Later writings of John's, from his time in jail, went on at length about his drug use, specifically how he wasn't attempting to self-medicate. John just liked to get high. Those that actually knew John said he would make comments about killing people, though as is often the case, they just didn't take him seriously. John was partying and heavily using drugs in the days leading up to the shooting. He was sleeping in his car a lot, and while he claimed he only really drank when he could afford it, it seemed he often could afford his favorite pint of vodka in the time leading up to the shooting. John estimates that between the ages of 15 and 21, which is how old he was at the time of the shooting, he was using benzodiazepine, also known as benzos, on occasion. This includes Xanax, Klonopin, and Valium. He also used opiates, including hydrocodone about 10 times, and oxycodone about 10 times. He admitted to using Ambien recreationally about 30 times, and used cocaine about 5 times. He used Suboxone for about a year before the shooting. John's parents were pressuring him to get a job, which doesn't seem outrageous, considering he was a full-grown adult. John did meet with a psychiatrist after the shooting, but before the trial. The doctor noted that John paid an abnormal amount of attention to his hair, ensuring there was never a hair out of place. He indicated that John avoided eye contact initially, though over time, he connected more. John was easily distracted, and jumped from one topic to another, never discussing one thing for very long. One thing the psychiatrist noted was that John smiled at inappropriate times, such as when discussing dark subjects. He also exhibited strange behaviors, and made odd comments such as denying being depressed, but admitted to getting anxious, displaying hypochondriac tendencies, and acting out in childish ways. The only time he showed any suicidal ideation was he said that if his hair fell out and he was bald for his eventual trial, he would kill himself. The doctor reported that John made some delusional self-proclamations such as, his head was lopsided, the right side of his ribcage is smaller than the left, his right leg was shorter than the left, right arm was bigger than the left, and he had an obsession with losing his hair. While in jail, John kept track of how many hairs he lost when he showered, and he was absolutely petrified to go bald. The doctor noted that John seemed preoccupied with how many hits his Wikipedia page had, and how he believed that the world was not safe. White people were under attack, according to John. When John was 19 years old, his uncle attempted to mentor him, but John pushed him away. He eliminated contact with the majority of his family, but reached out on occasion. One of his half-sisters sent John an invitation to her wedding, but John didn't even acknowledge it, let alone attend. On March 13, 2015, John was investigated for loitering in his parked car near a park in downtown Columbia. A subsequent search turned up 6 unloaded magazines and an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle forearm grip. When questioned about the items in his car, John said he wanted to purchase an AR-15, but couldn't afford one yet. It wasn't illegal to possess a firearm grip in South Carolina, so the police weren't obligated to charge or hold John. He was arrested on April 26, 2015, for trespassing, when he was found on the Columbia Center Mall's property after his warning, and the trespass ban was extended for an additional 3 years. As mentioned, John was living with his mother at the time of the shooting. They shared a spacious home near the Congaree River in Columbia.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
41-year-old Reverend Clementa Pinckney was born on July 30th, 1973 in Beaufort, South Carolina. Coming from a large family of 6 children, Clementa began preaching at age 13 and was appointed pastor at age 18. He graduated from Allen University in 1995 and in 1996, when he was only 23 years old. He became the youngest black person elected to the South Carolina legislature. In 1999, he earned a Master of Public Administration degree from the University of South Carolina, and in 2000, Clementa was elected to the state senate. While at the university, he also studied at the Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary and was known for pushing legislation to assist police officers in obtaining much-needed body cams for all police. The Reverend Clementa Pinckney is survived by his beloved wife, Jennifer, and their 2 children, Eliana and Milena. He will be mourned not just for the incredible humanitarian efforts he put forth, but for the amazing husband and father he was. Tywanza Sanders was the youngest of all the victims. He was only 26 years old. Born in Charleston, he attended Ferndale Baptist School for elementary and middle school, and graduated from James Island Charter High School in 2006. Tywanza then attended the Denmark Technical College in Denmark, South Carolina, before graduating in 2014 from Allen University, where he majored in business administration. He was an incredible student and loved to learn, even obtaining a diploma in applied science in barbering. His interests included creative and performing arts. Indeed, Tywanza started writing and composing music at a young age, and this led him to poetry writing. During college, he performed poetry readings at many open mic nights, and loved sharing his passion with the world. Once he graduated, Tywanza worked as a licensed barber, and had recently been accepted to Full Sail University in Florida to pursue a degree in media and communications, and was due to start classes in the fall of 2015. A scholarship was created in his name, called the Tywanza Sanders Legacy Scholarship, benefiting high school students graduating from the state of South Carolina. Tywanza is survived by his mother, niece, and many other friends and family, who will fiercely miss the gregarious, loving young man. Reverend Sharonda Coleman Singleton was a 45-year-old assistant pastor at Mother Emanuel AME Church. A native of Newark, New Jersey, she graduated from Vailsburg High School in 1987 before attending South Carolina State University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in speech pathology and audiology. She was a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and an award-winning hurdler for the SCSU track and field team. Eventually, Sharonda went to Montclair State University and earned a master's degree in speech language and pathology. In 2008, Sharonda started working for Goose Creek High School as a speech and language pathologist and was the head coach of the girls' track and field team there. Family was everything to Sharonda, especially her children, sons Christopher and Kalen, and daughter Cameron. Reverend Sharonda Coleman Singleton will never be forgotten, and her legacy lives on in her dear children. 54-year-old Cynthia Graham was born on June 21, 1960, and died only 4 days before her 55th birthday. A Charleston native, Cynthia was a manager for one of the branches of the Charleston County Library System, and looking very much forward to retirement after working for 31 years at the Charleston Library. One of 6 children, Cynthia's family were all members of the Emmanuel.